Yeah,
Okay.
it's all good.
Hi, my name is Annika. I'm an engineering physics student and I'm going into my third year.
Hi, I'm Krisha. I'm in chemical engineering and I'm done with my third year right now.
Hi, I'm Tree. I'm energy engineering major and I'm in my third year.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm a mechanical engineering major, and I just finished my second year.
So now for the introduction. The case we're presenting is titled Mishandling AI Tools Puts Civil Engineers at Risk for Ethical Violations. It explores how the use of artificial intelligence, specifically IBM's Watson for oncology, led to serious concerns in healthcare fields, with implications for all fields of engineering. This case is particularly important because it highlights the risk of deploying advanced technologies without fully understanding their limitations, specifically when those technologies influence critical decisions like patient care. So first, we're going to be talking about the facts and events about the case. For the timeline and the launch, IBM's Watson for Oncology was part of a $4 billion artificial intelligence system developed to assist doctors in treating cancers. It was publicly introduced in February 2011 on television and gained a lot of attention as a tool in medicine. The system was created through a joint research program between IBM and the University of North Carolina. How the system worked and sources of data. So, Watson for Oncology provided hospitals with cancer treatments recommendations. It was designed to analyze large volumes of medical data and suggest personalized treatment options to physicians. The goal was to support clinical decision making and ideally improve patient outcome by speeding up access to information. However, the system recommendations were based on one input from one hospital, Memorial Sloan Cancer Center in New York. This limited data source and introduced serious ethical concerns, as it did not represent a diverse range of medical practices. Purpose versus reality. While Watson was useful for as a research tool, it was also marketed as something that could directly impact real world medical decisions. This raised red flags as the tool was not universally validated.
What went wrong in this case started when IBM introduced an AI tool called Watson to help doctors treat cancer. However, instead of using real patient data from different hospitals, they trained it with made-up cases and advice from only one hospital because they deemed the real data to be very messy and complicated. Because of this, Watson gave bad treatment recommendations, which are unsafe and just won't work to different parts of the world because of the differences of drug availability. The biggest issue is when Watson gave a wrong recommendation, no one took responsibility for it and were just shrugged it off as just part of the training process. Um, this case connects to our responsibilities as engineers, especially when it comes to AI tools in our work. The ASC, which focuses on civil engineering, reminds us to protect public safety and act honestly. But here in Alberta, we follow PEGA's rule of code of ethics, which outlines 5 key rules that apply across all disciplines. First, rule number 1 is about protecting the public. Even though Watson wasn't widely used on real patients, it was still recommending unsafe treatments, and that alone shows how serious the risk it can be when we use untested tools. Next, rule number 2 reminds us to work within our competence. If we were using AI systems without understanding how they work or what their limitations are, we're stepping into a territory where we may not be qualified to handle. In rule number 3, which focuses on integrity and objectivity, Watson's flaws weren't clearly explained to its users. As engineers, we're expected to be transparent about the risks for any tools we apply in our work. For rule number 4, it tells us to protect the profession's reputation. Trust in engineering drops when we rely on tools that fail or unproven, which specifically damages the public trust. And lastly, rule number 5 is about fairness and dignity. Even without direct harm, people deserve honesty and respect when tools are flawed. That means clearly communicating the strengths and limitation of technologies like AI. So the real issue isn't whether Watson work or not, but is about who takes responsibility if it fails and whether we were even thinking to ask those important questions before we decide to use it. AI is becoming part of every branch of engineering, not just civil engineering. That's why it is so important that we need to use it with care, transparency, and ethical judgment.
So that's my part. Throughout the course, we examine how we can throughout the course, we examine different ethical problems. For example, the design for ethics problems, the Aperia Code of Conduct, and the leadership in ethics. Those are very important problems, and engineers should put those ethical problems into consideration. So I will try to make those connections with between the course materials with this case. First of all, this is the design for safety case. AI can optimize designs, predict structural failures, predict something that engineer might oversee, but sometimes the algorithm may be biased, poorly trained, or misapplied. And sometimes it can come up with some unsafe solution. Is that a problem?
Yeah, just keep going.
The article provides the example provided in the articles was when a generalized treatment procedure was applied to different patients, and it caused some very unforeseen problems. And blindly trusting AI without rigorous validation undermines the duty of engineers, where so we as an engineer should ensure AI tools are transparent, auditable, and always follow a human judgment. The same can say for design for cost when an AI trained model cannot give the different cannot cannot provide it can provide value methods to reduce production costs, but it cannot see the unforeseen risk, which can make the cost cutting method that AI provide can cause some accidents in the future. And due to these problems, regulatory bodies like APEGA or ASCEs is very important in producing an ethical frameworks for engineers. In the articles, ASCE took initiatives and gave us the definition what AI should be done and what engineers should do. It, it said, quote, AI has the potential to enhance efficiency, innovation, and sustainability in civil engineering practices. However, AI cannot be held accountable. Now it can replace the training experience and judgment of the professional engineer in the planning. And lastly, I would like to talk about the leadership in ethics. Using AI to replace human and professional judgment is a very lazy and unethical way of engineer to not taking any initiative, taking any leadership ethics. That is why engineers should not rely on AI in making important judgments. Now it's Colin's part when he
So this case about AI brings upon some very important questions to ask about AI and the risks that come with it. So we're just going to go through those. So what can an engineer do to ensure they aren't relying too much on AI and still ensure their ethical judgment and responsibility? Since AI should only be used as a support tool and not the decision maker, it is unethical for engineers to use AI past their capacities, and that they should still use a professional judgment to make decisions. The PEGA Code of Conduct outlines this and requires safety before convenience. So you want to make sure that all work being done by engineers are safe and looked upon. In doing so, engineers should do spot checks to ensure that AI design or decisions are aligned with professional expertise. As students, we also have to follow similar guidelines as engineers follow their code of conduct. In doing this, we want to make sure that we aren't putting too much emphasis in creating plagiarism or unethical decisions. Since AI may be trained based on incomplete data, what is the responsibility of the engineer to address those biases before decisions using AI are made? Engineers must assess the quality of the source. It is their responsibility to ensure that the source and tool that they are using is ethical in nature. By ensuring that the data that the AI was trained on is verified, engineers can ensure that their work is being done safely. Engineers should also mitigate bias, and this should be added as a step in the design review process, specifically for AI. Transparency about limitation also ensures informed decisions when using AI tools. Another question, do you think that existing engineering codes of ethics are sufficient to regulate the risks of AI, or should there be new ethical guidelines specifically for the use? Current EPEGA codes may generally cover but not address specific AI cases. New guidelines can provide clarity on acceptable use, bias control, data ethics. Since AI is such a new tool in the space of engineering, it provides a lot of uncertainty with transparency, accountability, and autonomy. Being able to regulate this can provide engineers with a safe way to use AI tools for their work in the future. If AI is used in a decision that causes harm, is it the ethical responsibility of the developer who created the AI or the engineer who used it, or both? Inherently, it is both their faults if something causes harm. Since the responsibility is in different ways, the developer has a responsibility to ensure that the data that the AI is trained on is inherently safe and does not include any biases. But it is also the responsibility of the engineer to ensure that this has been verified and that the tools they are using are acceptable in their decision-making process. The conclusion. This case about IBM and Watson shows the risks that come with using unregulated AI and provides a way for engineers to learn how to ethically use AI tools. AI is becoming an ever popular tool in the engineering industry. The quick advancement and specialized training makes it a useful tool for engineers. Being a new field of technology comes with uncertainty, and learning how to regulate and appropriately use the tool will be essential to creating engineering work with AI in the future. Even with new regulations and guidelines, it is the responsibility of the engineer to ensure that they are not overstepping their capacity and over relying on AI. Engineers have a responsibility to ensure that the ethical nature of the tool is verified when they use it, and that the tool is not used for decision making, but only assisting in the step of the process. Overall, AI is very useful, but the current unprecedented nature of AI tools in engineering field makes it hard to judge and implement into regular engineering use. Watson provides us with a good case on how the ethical responsibility of the engineer is in being used in AI and how we can go into future decisions of using AI in an ethical manner. That's all I have. Here's our contributions, and then our main article source, and that's it.